talk show. This is Nipasa Pradhan, and sadly, sorry about the unfortunate technical difficulty we just had, but I'm so glad to be back. And today, friends, today's topic is actually a continuation of our previous episode, and it is Are You an Asylum Seeker? And this is a masterclass to obtain an approval with none other than Gianna Florentino, and she's here from Florentino. Thank you so much, Gianna, once again for being so patient and joining us once again today.
Of course, it's great to be here. Thank you, Nipa.
So where we cut off, let's just take that up quickly. And if you could tell us about the update, if you can share some information about the latest visa bulletin.
Right. So as I was saying, Nipa, so the visa bulletin is essentially a list of preference categories for those family petitions that are not considered immediate relatives. So immediate relatives are spouses, children, and parents of United States citizens. Those relationships are considered immediate relatives. And what that means is that you can apply, and the government should immediately, once they receive it, start processing those applications. Unfortunately, there are some familial relationships that are not immediate relative categories, and those are found in what's called the Visa Bulletin. The Visa Bulletin is a list of all these different familial relationships, and for each category, it tells you how long it's taking the government to process these applications. So, for example, the F1 category is sons and daughters that are over the age of 21, but that are unmarried of United States citizens. So, say I'm a United States citizen, I have a 28-year-old son who's unmarried in my home country of Italy, and I want to bring him here. I can apply for him right now, and in probably a year and a half's time, it will be approved. But he cannot actually not use that petition until his priority date for the application is current. All of the priority dates come out every month in the Visa Bulletin. So, for example, let's say I have a son, like I said, in Italy. That would be on F1 category. And right now,
Mhm.
the Visa Bulletin of May 2024 that was just released says that the government is taking applications up until July 8th, 2015. So what does that mean? That means that if I apply now, you have to wait for the government to catch up from 2015. So the applications are about 9 years behind. So what that
Oh
means
my
is you
goodness.
can expect about a 9 year wait until the government actually begins processing your application, and then from there, you can use the petition. So it is it's a long wait period depending on what category you are. For example, if you're trying to bring a sibling, your petition will not be current, which means ready to use it in order to apply for your green card for probably about 16 to 17 years, as the government is still in July 22nd of 2007. So if you're planning on applying for a family member, I would definitely check out the Visa Bulletin. Like I said, it comes out every month. You can check out what category your family member would be and how long it will take for them to actually use that approved petition in order to apply for their green card.
Goodness me, the wait. I mean, 16, 17 years. I don't know where will I be in another 5 years, but that's a long wait period. It's crazy. Are you dealing with anything as lengthy, Gianna, or have you ever dealt with anything so lengthy?
Yeah, so to date, I have not. I mean, one of the main interactions I have with the visa bulletin is for special immigrant juvenile visas. So that is actually
Mhm.
category EB4. And right now, the government's it has caught up. The line was about 6 to 7 years a few years ago, and now it's about 4 years. So the government is actively catching up on this backlog. So right now, they're processing applications from November 1st, 2020. So they're almost in 2021, which means if you have a special immigrant juvenile visa that is approved, you will be able to apply for your permanent residence in about 4 years. That's still a wait time, but that's a wait time a lot of people can deal with, especially because
Right.
in most cases you can work during, while you're waiting. You'll have a work permit, you'll have a social security number, and you'll have lawful status. So for some of the
Mhm.
categories, it makes sense to wait. But what I would advise, some of these categories, it just will probably not work. Like if I'm trying to apply for my sibling, again, it's going to take 17 years and then some to finish the permanent residency process. I would argue that it makes sense to maybe try a different way. As You don't want your sibling coming here as an elderly person, having to wait all of those years in your home country. So yeah, definitely would consult with an attorney about alternative options depending on the wait time and depending on your personal circumstance.
For sure, for sure. Look at the best options, friends. I think that's what I can say. And yes, consult an attorney. Expert advice is always recommended. Okay, Gianna, let's go ahead with another question then. And that is the presence of an attorney allowed during the asylum interview, and how does it impact the process? And how can an attorney, influence the outcome of the asylum interview?
This is a great question. So, yes, you are allowed to have an attorney with you during the asylum interview. I actually just had one the other day in Newark, the Newark Asylum Office. And so it's interesting the role of the attorney in at USCIS interviews and at the asylum interview in particular is very limited. Typically in court, I get to conduct direct examination, I get to present my case, I get to make closing arguments and all of this. But at the asylum interview, it's a little bit limited. So it's essentially like a you don't speak unless you're being spoken to kind of situation, because the interview is between the applicant and the interviewee. So, for example, if
Mhm.
they ask the applicant, have you ever applied for permanent residency? And that's a legal question. Maybe my client says no, but maybe the answer is really yes. I'm not allowed to step in and say no. Excuse me, officer. He's just confused. Really, he did apply. I'm not allowed to do that because I'm not allowed to usurp the role of the applicant in testifying on his own behalf. However, if the client says, no, I didn't apply, and then the officer looks up at me and says, counsel, I'm confused. I see an application from a previous time. Can you explain this to me? I can say, yes, officer, thanks for asking. That he's actually confused. He's thinking of some other thing. Yes, he did apply in this year and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So if they look to me to explain the procedural history of the case or a legal issue, I can absolutely resolve that. And I'll say a lot of the times they do ask because a lot of the times the officer is confused. They don't know what happened in the case. And,
Mhm.
sometimes the applicants are not very knowledgeable about their own cases. So that's why it's
Mhm.
good to have your attorney there as an additional advocate to make sure everything is kind of clear. Nothing is, mistaken. They don't think that your client is committing fraud or lying. Sometimes it's just a miscommunication, especially with language barriers and other things like that. It's really important to have someone else in your corner that can kind of make everything clear for the officer. Um, Another really important thing about having your attorney is that the one thing you can do, usually, unless the officer, forbids you from doing it, which they're really not supposed to, is you can make a closing argument. So whenever the interview's done, you can make an argument on behalf of your client why the application should be granted, whether that's asylum, whether that's a
Mhm.
familial petition. And so it's really good to have someone there, kind of restating the law and summarizing to the officer why your application should be granted. And sometimes that can have a really positive effect, especially when the officers, it's good to remember these officers are not usually attorneys, they're not judges. They're just, government employees that are kind of doing their best with the situation. And sometimes they're not keeping up on the new laws and how that impacts asylum applications in particular. So it's good to have an
Mhm.
attorney who can explain the law to the adjudicating officer.
For sure, for sure. And like you said, language barriers. So to have a clearer picture, I think it's always best to take your attorney along then, friends, as Gianna suggested. All right, so let's go ahead, Gianna. And oh, I'm so happy to see folks have joined in here as well. So hi to Raya, Pradeep. We will take up your questions. Stay with us, all right? And Gianna, before we move to the viewers' questions, I wanted to also ask, uh, what possible outcomes, sorry, I think, yeah, what possible outcomes can applicants expect after the asylum interview, and what steps should an applicant take if their asylum claim is denied?
Right. So this is a really good question. So there are three possible outcomes following your asylum interview. One, it is approved on the same day. You have the interview. They tell you, thank you so much for sharing your story. Your application is approved. Obviously, this is the outcome we're all looking for. It's obviously also possible for your application to be denied. right on the spot. They could say, I'm sorry for what happened to you. Unfortunately, that doesn't qualify you for asylum. Your application's denied. Or thirdly, they can tell you, we're not ready to make a decision on your case. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you a decision by mail, or maybe we might send you a request for more evidence. Just wait for our next correspondence, and then you'll know kind of what's going to happen going forward. This third option can be really frustrating for people because they want a decision on their cases. But I always tell my clients before we go in that these are the three possible outcomes, and that just because they're not ready yet doesn't mean they're not going to approve it. Sometimes they just need to run it up to a supervisor, or sometimes they just want to write out an official written decision. So a lot of the times they'll tell me I can't make a decision, and I'll tell my client, I'm virtually certain this is going to get approved. Just wait a few weeks, and then a week or two later we get an approval in the mail. So those are the three different outcomes, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything bad if you don't get a decision on that day, and it also doesn't necessarily mean anything good. It really just depends on the officer and what they want to do on that day with the decision.
Okay. Okay. So just stay open, friends. I mean, don't be scared of whatever decision comes in. All right. So, well, Gianna, how should applicants prepare for the asylum interview when they are preparing themselves? And what types of questions should applicants expect during the asylum interview? Maybe some common ones you can help them out with.
Yes. So this is a great question. So I wrote down what I think the first thing that clients should
Oh,
do:
great.
the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how do you know. These are the questions you need to really be familiar with your story. At the end of the day, you are the one being interviewed, not your attorney. So you need to
Mm,
remember what happened to you. Let's say you were extorted. When were you extorted? How many times were you extorted? In what form? Was it in person? Was it by text message? Was it a threatening phone call? Who were you living with at the time when that happened? Were there any witnesses? Why do you think this happened to you? And how do you know? That's the biggest question. Because if you're saying, well, I believe this was the government persecuting me because of my political opinion, that's a really strong asylum case. The officer is going to want to know, how do you know that? What makes you believe that? And maybe the answer is, well, I've been receiving threats from police officers. I see them in uniform, they come by my house, and now I started receiving threatening phone calls. Well, that gives a lot of credence to the theory that it probably is the government persecuting you. So these
mhm.
details are extremely important for the officer to be able to make an informed decision about whether or not they believe you're being persecuted by the government, or by a non-governmental actor that the government is unwilling to stop from persecuting you. So the most important thing is review your case. Review every statement you've made to immigration, all of the evidence, personal statements, witness statements. Make sure you review all of that. Everything is internally consistent, meaning
Mhm.
my statement is the same as my mom's, is the same as the witness to the case, and there's no inconsistencies. And in addition to that, having that all committed to memory. You can't go back. I mean, you could bring documents with you and be like, I'm not sure of the date. Maybe it was this date. Here, let me give you the police report. That's typically fine. But the thing is that the officer wants to make sure you're telling the truth. And if this happened last year and you can't really remember when it happened, that might signal to the officer that maybe you're not telling the truth. So the more that you can
Mm.
memorize, the better. If you truly don't, this is my best advice. If you truly do not remember the answer for whatever reason, tell the officer, I do not remember. I believe maybe it was around this time. I believe maybe this, but I'm not sure. It's important to let the officer know that you're not sure if you're really not, instead of inventing an answer. Because if you invent an answer with confidence and that invention is wrong, it leads to a major inconsistency that can cause problems in your case. So I would say try to be familiar with your case, try to be honest, and communicate all of that to the officer.
Thank you. Thank you, Gianna. So the main thing you have to keep in mind are the four W's and the one H, right? So keep that in mind and keep those clear at least. And what is very important is what is never forgotten. So if it is a very important thing for you, I don't think you'll ever forget the dates also. So I'm sure you will prepare as you go for your interview. It's very important to keep all these very important things in mind. Thank you, Gianna, for brushing that up for us. And also, like in relation to what you just stated, Gianna, can government officials seek asylum if they feel prejudiced about the opposition party or the current government?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yes, they can. So, for example, say you have a government official that worked for a prior administration, and then a new administration comes to power, and they're directly in conflict. This is really dangerous for government officials because there's a record of your employment, there's a record of your name, there's a record of which politician or which president you were in support of, and now that you have this new administration who has all of the resources in the world to find out where you are, what you do, where you live, if you have kids, all of the situations about your life. And if it's a government that's corrupt or a government that is, not following humanitarian guidelines, it's very possible that they will seek you out, try to arrest you for being, a political opposer, try to detain you. Maybe they kidnap you, maybe they kill you, maybe they torture you. I mean, this sounds maybe extreme to some people, especially those people here in the United States. A lot of people can't believe that this happens, but it happens all over the world. I mean, Central and South America, the Middle East, Asia, there's a lot of really unfortunate corrupt governments and unfortunate situations that loyal government officials find themselves at risk of death because of these situations. So yes, they absolutely can. And I would recommend, again, if you are in this situation, to consult with an attorney about your case.
Thank you, Gianna, for taking that up. And I think it's time to go for a short break. No, Gianna, let's just go take a breather, maybe have a glass of water and come back. So, folks out there, if you have direct questions to Gianna, the information, her contact information is displayed on the screen. Please note it down. You can call her in the number 516-605-3354. You can even email her at gflorentino at forflorentino.com. Please check it out. Sorry. Once again, I repeat, gflorentino at forflorentino.com. And also visit the website forflorentino.com. And don't go anywhere. We will be talking more about asylum seeking and how to obtain um, the approval for it. So stay with us on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. This is Nipasa Pradhan.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for U.S. citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E-3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry. Exceptional employee benefits. Highly rated by our employees. Global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us in the number 408-335-6444 or mail us at nipa@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I hope you're enjoying this conversation, though we had a little technical interruption in between. Thank you once again for joining us here in this episode, this very amazing webinar we're having with none other than immigration attorney Gianna Florentino. Thank you so much, Gianna, once again for doing this today with us.
Of course, again, I'm happy to be here. It's my pleasure, really.
Great. And it's a continuation, friends. Today's topic, we are talking about asylum seeking and how to obtain an approval for it, the ins and outs of everything asylum related so far in the United States. So, thank you, Gianna, for also the update about the visa bulletin we had just before the break. And I think we should dive into the questions from the viewers. Let's take up a few which were also posted in the previous stream. And this is from Raji in the previous, in this episode itself. So, my wife is an asylum applicant and is from Latin America. She's added me as a derivative in her application. I came in the country on F1 visa. Now I am considered as a non resident alien with EAD. So, due to being a derivative in the application, I have lost my perks of leaving the country as well. My parents are trying to apply for a tourist visa. Will it affect their visa due to my status? Okay,
So this
that
is
is
a
that
great
is quite a situation.
It's just a great question. So firstly, being a derivative on the asylum application of your wife, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't leave the country, but it does mean that you cannot and or really should not go back to the country which your wife is claiming asylum for. So you and her can both not return to that country because you're claiming fear for that from that country, right? So if you go back there, that's going to be a big problem for immigration because they're going to say, well, are you really afraid to return if you're visiting her family, which is very unfortunate. But that is, we do recommend that you don't go back to the country that you are claiming asylum from, as it will probably destroy your case. With respect to the question of your parents, so if they apply, your question is if they apply for a tourist visa, will your pending derivative application of your wife affect their ability to apply for a tourist visa, or whether that will be approved? I would say no. And the reason that I'm saying no is because in order to get a tourist visa approved, the government really wants to know a few things. They want to know, why are you coming to the United States? If you're coming, to visit, that's fine. They want to know, what kind of assets do you have in the home country? So say they're coming from India, for example, and they have a business and they have 2 houses and they have, property there. It's highly likely that they're just coming to visit because they're not just going to abandon their lives back in India, right? So the question here is, will it affect them? Probably not, because, your pending derivative application from your wife is not going to give any sort of lawful status to your parents. And it's also, it's not the type of situation where it suggests that they're not coming here, that they're not coming here, for visitor purposes, right? Your application is directly linked to your wife. And insofar as you two are, a family unit that are fearing persecution based on her country conditions, I don't think that has anything to do with your parents. And so that's the argument that I would make as well. I would just make sure that your parents are honest on the visa application and with the consular officer. So if they ask, do you have any family members in the United States? The answer is yes. Does your family member have any pending applications? Yes. And it's important to be honest because, there's a lot of tracking that goes on between family members, between alien numbers and different things like that. So I really don't think it should affect them during their process, but I would make sure that they absolutely are completely honest on the application so that, they don't run into fraud problems, which will almost certainly lead to a denial of the visitor visa.
True, true. Thank you. Thank you for taking that up, Gianna. This is Raji on YouTube. Thank you, Raji. And if you have any further questions, you can always keep dropping them in the comments. We will take them up.
Or
All
you
right,
can
so let's move on.
at the
Oh,
below
yes,
contact.
our contact, Gianna.
Quick plug, I do conduct free consultations. So anyone who wants to contact me directly at the below contact information, I'm happy to have a free consultation.
There you go. Free consultation. I mean, Gianna, you're really very kind. So how many if you don't mind me asking, how many free consultations do you do daily, is it?
Yeah, usually at least once a day. I have someone calling, someone's friend recommended them to call me. I would say probably like 5 to 10 per week. But like I mentioned, we are a completely virtual firm. So the great thing is that I can conduct these consultations via video call, via telephone call. And so really it doesn't take as much time as it would to schedule time out of my day to meet with someone in person. So again, this is one of the benefits of having a virtual firm. I'm able to help more people and communicate more freely with people about their issues.
This is very sweet and very kind of you. Thank you so much, Gianna. Keep on doing this great deed. I mean, your initiative is great, I would say. I mean, 5 to 7 daily, every week is a good number.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take up Raya's question on YouTube asking, are there specific regions or countries that have higher success rates for asylum seekers in the US?
Yeah, this is another great question. So, and this was actually something I was going to bring up earlier, which is that, some people, another misconception is people say, well, I'm from this country, so I can't apply for asylum, right? So there are countries that have higher rates of grants. So I would say, at this time, China has really high grant rates. Jamaica has high grant rates, specifically for people who are, homosexual or have a sexual orientation claim, as it's illegal to be married to someone of the same sex there. Ukraine obviously is having issues. Yemen, countries that are experiencing severe persecution because of religion, race, national origin, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. Other countries I can think of right now, Venezuela, Nicaragua, because of the political turmoil going on there. So there are a certain, number of countries that do have very high success rates. Alternatively, there are countries that don't have very high success rates. So one, I would say maybe Mexico. Weirdly, you might think Mexico, is dangerous or has a lot of issues, but compared to a lot of the other South and Central American countries, Mexico's doing pretty well. So it's a little bit of a higher bar to prove that you're in danger in Mexico. So yeah, it really depends. Same for Europe, right? If you're from England, it's going to be hard to claim asylum, saying that your government's persecuting you when you have a government that, by and large has religious freedom and has stuff like this. So when we think about asylum, we're thinking about Central and South America, we're thinking about Asia, we're thinking about Russia and Ukraine, we're thinking about the Middle East. But that doesn't mean that you can't claim asylum, because maybe there is a situation in your country where you're being persecuted. Maybe it's not happening across the board, but if you can prove that it's happening to you, that's all you need to prove, right? And I'll note, just for the record, because it's very interesting, there are actually people that have claimed asylum from the United States in other countries. So this means that they were receiving persecution here in the United States and they had to flee the United States. So if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. And that's something to keep in mind. Just because you're from one of these countries doesn't mean you can't. It just means you need to really prove that, you are eligible.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that up. And Raya, you too, and Raji as well. You can contact Gianna. Everyone out there, if you want to directly consult with Gianna, the information is displayed on the screen. Note them down. And let's move on to the next question from the audience. And this one is from Pradeep. Pradeep is asking, what is the difference between affirmative and defensive asylum processing, and which route is best for my situation? So
So
there's a follow-up. There's a follow-up. Let me just take that up also. How do I prepare a strong asylum application, and what documentation and evidence do I need to include?
right. So this is a topic with regard to affirmative versus defensive that we actually spent a lot of time on last time. So if you are so
Right.
inclined, you can definitely check that out. I believe that's our first question, and we probably spent about 30 minutes just talking about that. So I would definitely recommend you check that out. But I'll answer your question. The basic difference is defensive applications are if you are already in deportation or removal proceedings before an immigration court, and you're applying for asylum defensively in order to defend yourself from removal from the United States. Whereas an affirmative application is when you're not already in immigration proceedings, but you wish to affirmatively apply for asylum. And this is not with the court, it's with the United States Immigration Services, so USCIS. Whether one's going to be better or the other is going to depend on if you're already in removal proceedings. If you are already in removal proceedings, you don't have a choice, unfortunately. You have to apply defensively. Whether you want to apply affirmatively if you're not in proceedings really depends on the strength of your case. If you have a strong case, I would say go for it. If you don't, the risk is that if you apply affirmatively and you lose, you might actually be transferred into immigration court where you will have to be facing removal from the United States. So that really depends on the strength of your case, which brings me to your next question. So your next question is what I think is how do I prepare a strong asylum application and what documentary evidence do I need to include? So I have a list here that I formulated. So the number one things you're going to want to include, declarations from your home country. So if you have people, let's say, about the country conditions, like I said, you have a government that's persecuting you. I would get declarations from people that there, family members, friends, that can attest, yes, I know this person, I know what they were going through, I witnessed it, I was there, or even if they didn't witness it, I know that this happens, I have a friend, she went through the same thing, or, it's a known concept that the government is doing this. More evidence from people in your home country corroborating your case, kind of indicating that you are telling the truth, is extremely helpful. Another thing that you can include is medical reports and police reports. So let's say you were persecuted, you were arrested, you were beaten. Let's say you received medical treatment. If you made a police report about this incident, I would include the police report. If you made a medical report, if there was medical documentation of injuries that you suffered, I would include that as well. These are really important because they're objective evidence, right? They're not from an interested party. They're not from your brother, friend, person back in home country that obviously wants to help you. This is an objective government record or an objective medical record that you can prove that shows that your story is real. So if you have those, I would absolutely include them. Additionally, if anyone in your family, as a result of this persecution, died or was killed, I would include death certificates to show what had happened. Again, another objective record keeping, kind of device that has the autopsy, why they were, how they were killed, under what circumstances. And additionally, something that's really important that a lot of people proceed pro se without an attorney forget to include are news articles and country reports. So again, there are all of these different agencies. We have the U.S. Department of State. We have organizations like the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Humanist International, all of these different kind of non-governmental organizations that are, their whole job is to take account of the different conditions in different countries and kind of take an accounting of the persecution, what groups are most vulnerable, what's going on, when is it going on, how is it going on. And so I would include, usually I include about 150 pages minimum of country conditions evidence of what's going on in the home country. This is going to give, whether it's the immigration court or USCIS, a context and a backdrop of what is going on in the country and how that relates to what happened in this individual case. If you have political persecution across the board, it's much more believable that it happened to you, than if you didn't include that information, because we can't just assume that the adjudicator knows all of the stuff that's happening in every single country across the world. So it's your job or your attorney's job to really contextualize the harm and include a well-prepared application with all of the foregoing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure that was very helpful for Pradeep. And Pradeep, if you have any further questions, just drop them. Keep dropping them in the comments below, and let's go ahead to the next question. Of course, you can also contact Gianna. Her contact information is displayed on the screen. And this next one, Gianna, is from Jazila. Can you explain the differences between asylum, refugee status, and temporary protected status in the U.S. very briefly?
Yes, I can. And this is something we also talked about last time, I believe.
Right.
Very simply, refugees are processed outside of the United States. So these are people that are already outside of the United States that are seeking refugee status through the UNHCR. And this is an international, organization that processes refugees. So, for example, you're from Ukraine, or you're from Yemen, or you're from a country where, there's war going on. You can go, to either online or to one of the many, offices across the world, and actually, register for status as a refugee. And if you're approved, and there's a process that goes along with that, you can actually enter the United States with refugee status, and you're already basically approved. And then you can additionally, based on that, apply for a green card. So that process is more for people who are already outside of the United States, who, are refugees and, for various different reasons, whether that be war or natural disaster, they can apply from outside of the United States. Asylum, however, you actually need to be on U.S. soil or at a port of entry to the United States to apply for asylum. So you can't apply for asylum from outside of the United States. You have to actually be here. So that's why you see a lot of people coming from the border and stating that their intention to apply for asylum. You've already gotten here applying for asylum. It's because you actually have to wait until you're here to apply, which is unfortunate. But there are various benefits and drawbacks to that as well. Temporary protected status is a little bit different. It's what we call TPS. So you can only apply for TPS if you are one of the from one of the countries of nationality that has been designated for TPS. So right now, off the top of my head, that's going to be El Salvador, that's going to be Honduras, that's going to be Venezuela and Haiti, and I believe at this time that's all of them. But in addition, you need several things to get temporary protected status. You need to be from one of those countries or have last habitually resided in one of those countries. You need to be here on the date specific. So there's a specific date for Venezuelans for this period of TPS. It's July 31st, 2023. What this means is you needed to have been here on that day or before that day to apply for TPS. So let's say you came in August. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to successfully pursue your application for temporary protected status because you weren't here on the specific date. Why did they do that? Well, they don't want to encourage, let's say they designate Venezuela for TPS. They don't want everyone in Venezuela to start coming to the United States following the designation to apply for TPS. So
Mhm.
they set a specific date. So if you were here before then, because of the political situation in Venezuela, we're going to give you temporary protected status, which is usually it's legal status, and you can apply for a work permit so long as the country is designated. But let's say
Right.
in a year from now they revoke temporary protected status. They say, okay, Venezuela is all better now, you can go back. The thing about TPS is it's temporary. Whereas for refugee status and asylum, if you win either of those statuses, you can apply for your lawful permanent residency or green card and live here forever, presumably, indefinitely.
Mhm.
But with TPS, it's a temporary benefit, and it does not lead to a green card or permanent residency situation in itself. So that is the main difference between the three of those. I hope that answers the question.
Very interesting. Thank you for taking that up. And thank you, Jazila, for this very interesting question. And I think we should take up one last question before we end today's program, Gianna, if that's fine. So it's from Vihan saying, as someone who has dedicated their career to helping others seek safety and protection through the asylum process, how do you cope with the emotional toll of hearing traumatic stories and witnessing the struggles of your clients? And what self-care practices or support systems do you rely on to maintain your own well-being and compassion? Okay.
This is a great question, Vihan. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness about what I'm going through during these times. I'm gonna be honest. It's hard. When I first started, I was kind of like, okay, like this is difficult, but it's not a big deal. Then, not really paying attention to how this is affecting me subconsciously. I was having nightmares about different things that are going
Oh,
on with my clients. I'm frequently,
sure.
waking up in a panic because, it is really difficult and it is really serious. And as an immigration attorney, I take my clients' circumstances very personally. I want to make sure they can pay for the services. I'm very flexible with respect to that, as well as when it's a humanitarian case. And so, you really don't want to internalize the harm that your clients are going through to the extent that it's affecting your well-being. So I like to, make sure I have like designated distraction time. So like every Wednesday, no matter what's going on with my clients, obviously barring emergencies, every Wednesday, me and my fiance go out and we go see a movie. We're turning our phones off. We're making sure we have dedicated time to go,
Mhm.
decompress. Because if you have your phone on you and you're like me, who runs a virtual practice, I can always be answering the phone. I can always be checking my emails, but you need to be able to turn it off, even if it's just for a few hours, so that you can allow your mind to get out of the fight or flight response mode
So
and
true.
actually, relax. I also try to do
Mhm.
yoga, some things such like that. But it's not easy, and sometimes I forget to do that stuff. So I really appreciate the question because it's reminding me to take that stuff seriously and to really make sure that I am providing myself that time to kind of decompress from these very serious topics.
So true, Gianna. And I think this applies to everyone in every walk of life. It's very important to have some me time, so that you're not thinking about work and maybe do something totally away from work. Maybe switch off your work phone or your phone entirely because your phone nowadays takes up so much of your time and your waking time, that is. So, folks out there, just take care of yourself wherever you are and whatever you may be doing. So take some time out for yourself, get onto some entertainment and some, um, yeah, refreshing mode in between. Take some breaks. So thank you so much, Gianna, for this today. And also thank you, Vihan, for the question. Very, very important answer Gianna has given. So thank you, Gianna, for doing this today with us. Had a great time chatting with you.
Thank you so much, me as well. And I'm excited for the next time we get to do this again. Thank you so much, Nipasa.
Me too. Me too. I hope you can make time again very soon. So you have a great day ahead, Gianna. I'll see you soon then. And folks out there, you can contact Gianna. The information is displayed on the screen. Once again, I will just say you can call her in the number 516-605-3354, 516-605-3354. And then you can even email her at gflorentino@forflorentino.com. And don't also forget to visit her website, forflorentino.com. Thank you, Gianna. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. You as well.
And folks out there, thank you so much for joining, and keep dropping your questions in the comments, even if you are watching this after it has been streamed live. We will be able to take up your questions and we'll be happy to answer them, because we have our experts and attorneys who are very willing to help you guys out. So thank you so much for all those amazing questions and participants participating today in this webinar. And until next time, very soon, actually, I'm going to see you again later today at 2 p.m. We are going to have another attorney, none other than Chand Parvathaneni. We're going to have a good time. So tune in again and keep on watching Immigration and Jobs Talk Show for more information and updates on immigration and job. Thank you so much. This is Nipasa Pradhan signing off for now. Have a great day.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for U.S citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E-3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry. Exceptional employee benefits. Highly rated by our employees. Global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us in the number 408-335-6444 or mail us at nipa@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.